All right, everyone, good morning. It's Thursday morning, and this is the morning briefing from the Celtic Way. Looking back on Celtic's victory over Sporting Club de Portugal last night. Johnny, are you a Sporting Club de Portugal man or a Sporting Lisbon man?
I'm a sporting guy. Yeah, I think it's like when people call Celtic Glasgow Celtic, and it's probably
It
representative
is.
of the sporting fans. So I go with sporting. But yeah, no. Um, Interesting game last night, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed it actually. I thought it was played at a good tempo, proper match, wasn't it? I feel like the
Mm.
matches up to this point have they've kind of really felt like just getting going matches and really just out there. Obviously, last night was still a pre-season match, a friendly game, but it felt like more of a match in a proper stadium. I thought a decent enough crowd,
Hmm.
given that it's neither team were at home.
Hmm.
Probably more sporting fans in there, but a good Celtic support as well.
Yeah, no. It was a good occasion, good environment, a good test for the players, like in terms of fitness and quality of opposition. And I think, yeah, it was a step forward for me in pre-season of what I've seen so far. I've watched the every game, and I think it's pleasing to an extent that this was the first, I would say, team starting 11 that was of more established players with youth players, and Celtic notably looked better. So I think that's a decent sign. And there's plenty of talking points actually coming out of the game. Where they had a few eyes on some individuals and some people standing out, and I think it bodes well with the group that Brendan Rodgers got. But as we know, it needs that injection of further quality, I think, in some key areas, and hopefully that transpires.
So the team last night was the starting team. This is Schmeichel,
Hmm.
Ralston, Murray, Scales, Tierney, McGregor, Negron, Hatate, Forrest, Maida, Ida.
Mm.
So Alistair Johnson will come in for
Yeah.
Anthony Ralston.
Hmm.
Cameron Carter-Vickers will come in for Dane Murray.
Mm.
But other than that, in terms of what we actually have at our disposal right now, that's kind of the team at the moment.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that a large chunk of that team that played last night will play that first game against St Mirren. So it seems that Brendan Rodgers just is ramping up that group now, and they all got an hour or so. Well, most of them got an hour or so. Adamida had to go off, Schmeichel went off, but a good hour under their belts, and I think we might see a similar team against Newcastle, depending obviously. But Brendan Rodgers will be managing players' load and stuff like that. But I think it'll be a similarly competitive team against Newcastle at the weekend. As we kind of it's ramping up. It does feel like it's ramping up now, just both in the efforts of the players and kind of moving towards the start date of the season.
Yeah. Brendan Rodgers really happy with the performance. He described it as an outstanding performance, which is pretty big language for
Mm.
a pre-season match. He's not usually as kind of all or nothing, I guess, about a pre-season match. But I tend to agree with him. I think it was
Mm.
a really really good performance in that first half. Like the way we played through the Sporting press. I get that in a
Yeah.
in a pre-season match, it's probably a lot easier to do that because you've not got the
Hmm.
same baggage and the pressure. But we did it really well, and even even guys you wouldn't necessarily think it was their strength. I mean, Liam Scales, Dane Murray in particular, I thought
Yeah.
was really
Hmm.
good with the ball at his feet. Had a good tackle in the first half as well. I actually thought Dane Murray was excellent last night. I
Yeah.
thought he had
So
a
did
really
I.
good game.
Yeah. And so what I liked about when we're talking about playing through the press, there's a number of things I liked about it. I liked the way the Celtic midfield functioned in helping out the defenders, in the sense of Hatate was given the license to play further forward out of possession,
Yeah,
closer to Adamida in that first half.
it's
But
like two
Benjamin Negron,
strikers.
yeah, yeah. But Benjamin Negron was very mobile, both like in the attacking half, but also in the defensive half, and getting back and supporting Cal McGregor, and actually very clever in his positioning and giving the defenders an outlet to play through that press, as you've mentioned, and has the quick footwork and the quick eye for runners and teammates to get Celtic out of trouble in tight situations. I thought Dane Murray was excellent, as you've mentioned. I thought Liam Scales, to his credit, was much more forward thinking with the ball than he perhaps has been at times. I don't think that would be a weakness of the game. It's actually, I think that's a strength of his game at times. Sometimes he just picks the wrong pass, but he did all right, I thought. But Dane Murray certainly very composed, and I thought Kasper Schmeichel immediately just again. I think his
Yeah.
distribution is excellent, and I think he was really key again in giving the defenders an outlet, a different option to play through the press. And there was one moment where it did get a little bit tight in the back, but Kasper Schmeichel played it to Callum McGregor in the box, and Callum McGregor just turned and managed to get through. So that composure, that calmness in possession at the back was an upgrade last season compared to the season prior, and hopefully it just takes another step forward again, because it's that level and those combinations and that playing through the press puzzle that you need at the European level. And I think I was pleased with what I saw from that last night.
Yeah, a few people bringing up the pressing, and I did notice it actually. I was kind of Hatate's positioning, and he was alongside Ida. I was kind of watching when we had the ball, if it was the case, and it wasn't quite as much the case. No. I couldn't really notice. I was wondering, are we like 4-2-3-1 here almost? But I wasn't quite seeing it as much when we had the ball. But Brendan Rodgers spoke at the start of pre-season about, pre-season being an opportunity to try new things and keep, making us hard to guess and hard to play against for Scottish teams. So I think there's wee kind of things going on here that we're noticing.
Yeah, and I think just Negron's much more dynamic than Bernardo or Engels, and by that I mean much more direct and has that eye for a pass and that eye for runners that maybe other players don't have. Very much, and I know this is going to get said to the point of weariness, but he looks like a direct O'Reilly replacement to me. He needs. There's a long way to go for him to hit those heights, but I really think he's a player that fits far more the O'Reilly mould than Engels does and Bernardo does. And I think that bodes well, because I think we've missed that force in the midfield, that fluid, dynamic, maverick force in the midfield that isn't a luxury player. Like that's the good thing. That was the great thing about Matt O'Reilly. He wasn't just a playmaking player. He wasn't just arriving in the box to score goals. He was a hard-working, industrious player on, in defence and in the press and the defensive half as well. And Negron looks like he fits that mould to me. And I'm actually surprised he started his career as a striker, because he doesn't look like a striker at all to me. He looks like an accomplished midfielder. And I don't know where he'll finally settle in the team. Brendan Rodgers might want to play him on the right side at times, especially if Forrest isn't playing consistently and depending on who we sign as a winger. And you could see something like McGregor, Engels, Hatate, and then Negron as well on the right side against a Scottish Premiership opponent. I don't think we'd see that in Europe. I think that would be a bit too bold. But I think there's opportunities there for Negron to be effective in a variety of positions, and that versatility is really strong.
I really like that moment when I think it's from the attack you were talking about, where Kasper has the ball and Sporting have three players in our box and we play through, and it goes to Negron and he runs with the ball for about 40 yards. But then he finds a really good pass to Maid, and I think it was given as offside. I'm not actually sure it was, but I loved the fact that he got into that area and was able to actually find the pass, because I think how many times last season did we have players running through into that kind of area and the final pass just wasn't quite on. Negron looks exciting. We're not going overboard, obviously, but
it's more about style of play, isn't it? Rather than it's more about what Celtic's intent is or what they're trying to do that we're noticing, rather than the actual performance or the capability of these players. Because as you say, the tests to come are far bigger and more competitive than last night. But I think you're right. I think the style of what we're seeing or what we're trying to see Celtic accomplish bodes well for a change up from the second half of last season, where it was just too side to side. It was too rote and predictable. And Brendan Rodgers has talked about that consistently. To be fair to him, he has addressed those concerns head on. He's not pretended that Celtic were amazing in the second half of last season. He's talked about predictability, and I think the small changes he's making will help that.
A few people talking about, Sporting Lisbon's first game. It was actually their second friendly, because they played, I think, Nacional. They played on Saturday, and it was for a lot of our players that started.
It was their first,
potentially 6 or 7 or 8 of that team that started. It was their second match, and Schmeichel's first. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into that. I think we're probably at a relatively similar, point to Sport, maybe slightly ahead, but not by much. It's funny because there's a lot of negativity. You might have noticed, John, there's a lot of negativity and I guess pessimism surrounding Celtic at the moment. And it comes down to, I think, a number of things. I think, to be honest, away from the actual team itself and certain decisions being made by the club, the Newcastle friendly and the 8 million kits we've had on sale and the lack of transfer business or maybe meaningful transfer business. But I think some of it has been overblown. And I've seen a lot of stuff about this Celtic team. I've seen people saying, this is a terrible squad. This is, the worst squad we've had in a number of years. And I was watching the game last night and watching that midfield function against a good team. I know it's only pre-season, but a good team, Champions League team. And I'm watching Kieran Tierney at left back coming on, slowly but steadily getting there. And Dyson Maida's going to get there. And you think you've got Carter Vickers to come back and Johnson to come back, and you've got Schmeichel between the sticks. And I think it does remind you that this is a good Celtic team we've got. We've just got a few positions where we really need quality. But if we get that quality, then, what a team we could have.
Yeah, I get you. I think from a footballing perspective, purely, forgetting about all the other issues around the club and to do with the Adidas stuff and the Newcastle, I think Brendan Rodgers has a football unit that I still enjoy watching and still think can be successful. And that is a key thing to underline. For all I did a show earlier this week and I was complaining a wee bit about transfers and etc. But, it's important to have the context that I still think Celtic are a good footballing team with good players and the best manager in the country. And those are all big strengths to have going into a new season. I think I've got a slight issue with the way the transfer window's panning out, in the sense, again, and I said this last week, and I said, I'll wait to hear what Brendan Rodgers has to say about Shin Yamada, because I don't want to prejudge what kind of signing he is, but I did say that if he said he was more of a development type player, I would have a slight concern. So I have to come back. I'm not going to shy away from that. I have to come back and say what I heard from Brendan Rodgers on Shin Yamada wasn't particularly encouraging. He talked about him in the same way he talked about Inamura as a club signing, I think is his designation these days. Someone he wants to bring in and have a look at. That's another thing. That's another phrase you watch with Brendan Rodgers. So to me, Shin Yamada doesn't seem like someone who Brendan Rodgers is perfectly happy with to come in and impact his first team immediately. Now, that's not to say that Shin Yamada cannot do that. I think we've all been pleasantly surprised with what Inamura's shown in the early stages of the pre-season. But what I'm saying is, I think having too many of these club signings, as Brendan Rodgers puts it, would be a mistake, and we need more of the signings that will engage Brendan Rodgers and feel like Brendan Rodgers is strengthening his team, because that's what Celtic need right now. So there's a balance here in the transfer window. I'm a little bit disappointed that Yamada's in that club category and that he's not been identified with the full backing of Brendan Rodgers almost. And it's like, we have to have a look at him, we have to see what he offers type thing. We need the players who are established that Brendan Rodgers thinks can immediately improve this team. And we've had Tierney and we've had Negron, and that's it in that respect for me.
Yeah.
And it would be definitely, I think in the wing area, we definitely need more. As good as Dane Murray was last night, I think I have real question marks about that left centre-back slot with Scales and Trusty. And we need these players in the door quickly. So I'm pleased with the footballing aspect of everything, but I need more, Hamish, to really get invested in excitement about the potential of Celtic this season.
No, 100%. And
yeah,
I mean that's the point. I feel like it's the point we've been making. This time last year, that it looks like we have the makings of a really good team. We had a really good season last year, especially the first half. But there's just a few positions, and I guess that's added to by the fact that we've lost Kyogo, lost Kuhn, Jota's out. Like there is real. I mean, I was looking earlier, and I was not to put a horrendous idea out there, but if there's a number of players that if they were to pick up an injury enough to miss the Champions League qualifier, like I think we're one injury away from like Marco Tilio starting the qualifier, Yang starting, we're like a couple of injuries away from Dane Murray starting, or God knows what's happening at left back if Kieran Tierney picks up a knock. Like it's a bit precarious there at the moment, so we definitely need quality. And yeah, I get your point on the Yamada. So I'm reading the quotes now, and Brendan Rodgers talking about something the scouts have seen. He says he's probably one that can give us that intensity and pressure. The idea was to bring him in and assess him. He's a strong boy, but we'd want to add to our front line also. It's hardly a huge boost of confidence to Yamada.
No, but I mean, it's not. I've been quite. I've given the club leeway on these other types of signings because I think it's fine to make these types of signings. I don't have a problem with it at all, actually. And actually, you know what? I can please Brendan Rodgers still pushing for more because it could be like we've got Yamada, we've got Inamura, and like we're not looking for other players. But Brendan Rodgers is pushing for the players that he thinks will immediately improve this first team and strengthen it. So I'm happy that there at least is the intent there, and hopefully as the window progresses, we do see maybe a higher quality or more established player come into the club and excite everyone, because I think that's what everyone's waiting on, and that's fair. And to be honest, I've looked at Yamada a fair bit, and I think he looks like a good finisher. I think he scored a lot of headers in the J League last season. I think he's sharp. He's definitely that kind of penalty box player. He's not a build-up player, and having that sharpness and that finishing ability could be really good, because I think we do have some creative talent in the team that can harness that. So it's not that I'm totally down on the Yamada signing. It's more that when you read what Brendan Rodgers says and you read between the lines of what he's saying, it's just one of those things that doesn't particularly fill you with confidence. And I think right now supporters are looking for signings they have confidence in, and they don't need to be big, expensive signings. And Brendan Rodgers made that point as well. It's not about bringing big names to Celtic for big money. It's about bringing the right player. And I think Benjamin Negron is a perfect example of a player who doesn't have to cost the world, but who can make a tangible difference to the way that Celtic are playing. And that's the type of signing I want to see.
Kieran Tierney, another perfect example, hasn't cost as much. I know it's a bit of a unique situation, but coming in, improving the team, we just need more of that. Ross just bring up a point I wanted to actually bring up. He says, I really worry about the striker position this year. We're going to have 4 strikers and Rodgers wants another. How is this going to work? So I refer you back to the comments from this time last year when Brendan Rodgers spoke about his ideal striker scenario. Basically, it's to have 2 top strikers, so Ida plus Kyogo at that stage, and a young one, initially Rocco Vata. I think Johnny Kenny became that at some point. We now have 4 at the moment. Arguably none of them massively proven or to the level of Kyogo. I think that's fair. He wants to sign another one. Johnny Kenny, we think, probably leaves on loan, although I thought Johnny Kenny was really promising when he came on last night. But if he leaves, we then still have 4. It just seems that it's, more than anything else, it just, when Brendan Rodgers has so publicly said that a year ago, it now seems as if the club are just kind of chucking them strikers and go, right, deal with that. And it does leave you scratching your head a little bit about, is there one plan here, or are there 2 plans that are kind of both going on at the same time? And it needs to be one plan. I think Yamada might do quite well for us. Actually, I watched a bit of him and I think he could, but there's doubt there as well. He's not Kyogo. He's not at the same level Kyogo was when he came to us.
No, he definitely isn't. I think when we're thinking about the numbers, look, I think there's still stuff has to play out. Like you say, I think Johnny Kenny will go out on loan. I think he'll sign a new contract and go out on loan, which is good. And I think a loan in the Scottish Premiership could be the making of Johnny Kenny in terms of the perception of him and perhaps even a Celtic future. So I'm happy with that, because that seems like a reasonable step in his development from where he is right now. And again, I was impressed with him last night. I thought he worked well in that second half, actually. I thought he did better than Adama, which is another story. I think there's a chance Callum Osmond also goes out on loan. So immediately, again, you're bringing down the numbers a bit. Daiza Maeda, plays on that left-hand side. I think that's probably the preferred position for him, as much as he did well through the middle in the second half of last season. So then immediately you're thinking, you've got Yamada, you've got Ida, and hopefully you've got another really strong starting contender. Now, I could be wrong about Osmond. I've just got a feeling it might go that way. Brendan Rodgers.
There's not room for 4. There's not room for 4,
no.
Is there?
No, there's not room for four. No, no, four's overkill if you're going with the one up top, which I think we will again. I can't see changing to a two. I think if there is more of a two presence, it's like you mentioned earlier, it'll be more like what we saw last night, where one of the midfielders joins the press in that area, which was Hatate last night. So four is overkill. I totally agree with that. Yeah, four's overkill. And Brendan Rodgers wants goals in the team. That's what he says. He's not really talking about positions a lot, is he? He's talking about we've lost goals out of the team. We've lost the goals of Nicholas Kuhn. We've lost the goals of Kyogo. He's keeping his options open in terms of like what position he gets his star player in, which is also interesting. I think it might be more likely we're bringing a star winger. He said that on multiple occasions. It's easier to find a really quality winger than it is to find a really quality striker. So maybe that is also the route we're going down. But yeah, we need the goals in the team. We need something in that front three that is exciting and brings the team forward. Arguably two players, to be frank with you, Hamish. I think we need two players of that ilk who can improve that front three. And then everyone will start to feel more comfortable. But until we have that, I think it's right to have questions about the direction of Celtic's transfer window.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Just you mentioned him there, Adamida, bit of a tough night. A few people asking if he picked up a knock. I did see that mentioned. Someone was saying he was limping.
Yeah, so at half time, I think he was getting some chat from the physio team, from the medical team. I think there was a suggestion it might be his groin or something of that ilk. But I could see that being more of a precaution and just like, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'm not, it wasn't mentioned after the game. And so we'll have to wait and see with that one. It was a tough night for Adamida. I think he should have scored that chance that Tierney had a deep cross and it fell to him nicely. It fell a little bit awkwardly to his feet, but those are the chances you need Adamida to stick away regularly. And given, he was talking earlier in the week about getting closer to 30 goals and all that and being more consistent, we need him to be there and score in those moments. Those are the chances you need your starting striker to make. Especially in if it's a European game and a competitive game, those are the chances you need them to take. I think he's a bit of a confidence player, and once he sticks in a couple, then he starts to score those goals. Someone mentioned he scored in the last game. He did score in the last game. It was obviously a much easier chance, but it's those types of kind of. I wouldn't say it was a straightforward chance for him last night. It was because of the way it fell at his feet. But you're expecting your star striker to stick that away, frankly. And I think we need to see that consistency from Adamida going forward. And I'm not going to lie, I feel like he is a little bit of concern for me going into the season if he is our main striker.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of backed Ida a lot, and I mean, you do have to remember it's pre-season, and you have to give him that. but yeah, like. Oh, God, you have to be tucking that away, and there was a few occasions. He's such a strange player to kind of discuss because, take like Ibrox. Remember Ibrox? He was really poor in that first half. Had a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, and then pops up with the goal that gets us a draw. So it's always like, how much credit do you put on scoring goals? But my thing about him last night, away from the two chances that he missed, I know the first one was offside. His build-up play was his link-up play, was really poor, and I thought it stuck out badly last night because Celtic were so slick. There was a couple of moments where the ball came to him in the first half and it just kind of bounced off him, or he was just a bit cumbersome and had the ball nicked from him, and we just need a lot more. It's a difficult one, this Ida stuff. I think the Engels stuff is difficult as well, the trusty stuff, a lot of money spent in these guys. I still think Engels will deliver for Celtic. I still think Ida will score goals, but like none of them appear to be in. Sorry, Ida is in our team, but probably only because we don't have anyone else. But Engels and Trusty don't appear to be in Brendan Rodgers' top team at the moment. It seems like it's Scales and Negron that have their positions. But wait and see. I don't know if you got the comments from the manager on Ida last night, talking after the game. He says he needs to come alive. You can't be caught thinking at this level. You have to anticipate and move and then have authority in the box. I know he can score goals, and it's also the time of pre-season. So he is saying, it is pre-season, but interesting.
Yeah, he just said in one sentence, but I took about 3 minutes to describe that. That's exactly what I'm saying. He needs to be sharper and more live in that moment specifically. That's what you need from your striker. It's not harsh to say that. That's his job, And I think there has been a lot of over the top criticism of Vida, but I think it's also, you need to, as much as I think that's true, a lot of it's been over the top. And the stuff that he isn't doing, I think that is directly in front of your eyes, and the evidence is there. I think it's right to point out as a potential issue. And I think you're right in terms of the build up. He doesn't have that. What he doesn't have the one touch delivery to a teammate that arguably you need sometimes in that position. He never takes one touch to lay it off to someone or set someone up efficiently. You know, he has to take a touch himself. He has to bring it into his feet, and he doesn't have the execution to then, a lot of the time, to then lay it off to the teammate, lay it off to a runner in a way that is in the fluid way and the slick way that we saw from certainly Celtic's midfield and wingers to an extent last night.
He's a fascinating player. Just watching the comments coming in at the meter, because he's got his big defenders. People, Joe saying he loves Big Adam, gives his all, he'll get his confidence back. And then you have other people who just don't rate him at all. So he's an interesting one. Just another couple of things for the manager. You might have caught everyone saying that Lewis Palma will probably go out on loan. Probably not a huge surprise there. Says there's interest in Hyun-Jun Yang, which I think we knew about. Norwich City, certainly one of the clubs interested there. But it seems like he wants to hold on to Yang if possible. Says he's been quite a good squad player. Personally, that's how I feel as well. I would quite like to keep Yang around because I think he can offer us something this season. How much, we'll wait and see. But I thought he showed, good moments in the second half of last season. And also the biggest news, John, saying that Hyuku Kwon will leave. So he's going to be moving on. Not a great sign in that one.
No, not a good sign in that one. Lewis Palma didn't quite work out in the way everyone hoped after a decent flash of form in the first few months. So no big surprises there. In terms of Yang, I'm similar to you. Like I've no harm in keeping him around. What kind of struck me was that from the reporting, it seemed like he was open to moving and perhaps wanted a move, which is interesting, because obviously you don't want a player in that squad role who's not happy having that squad role, if he wants to be starting more regularly. I like him as a player, but if he wants to be playing every week, I think he does need to go somewhere else, because I don't think he'll be starting every week at Celtic anytime soon, frankly. Yeah. But as a squad player, I totally agree. I'm not as down on Yang as some. I'm also not as high as him, high on him as some either. I think he's decent, and I think there's something there, but Celtic need more there. And so if I'm looking and thinking, if Celtic are bringing in more players, then Yang's only going to fall down further, and he's not going to be playing regularly, so maybe he does need to go,
Yeah, he's thing about Yang, like, when he's poor, he's really poor, because he doesn't really hide. He just ends up looking horrendous, trying things. And talk about confidence players, there's quite a lot of confidence players in the squad, I would say, and ideally you find a way to get over that and have more kind of reliable players. I guess everyone's a confidence player to an extent, but it just seems like a lot of them are either amazing on their day or not very good. Kieran Tierney's coming on as well. Just seeing signs of the player we know he can be.
Yeah, and again, the cross for the Adamida chance is something, that's something like I hope we see regularly from Kieran Tierney. It's something that we know he's regularly capable of, and again, that gives Celtic something different from last year. Greg Taylor had the decent crossing on from time to time, but not in that sense, not at that level, and with that directness, I would say, and that's what you're looking for from Tierney. And I think it's one of those things where obviously we've all got our eyes on Negron because he's the new player, and so that adds a bias to how you see the game and how you think they were influential in the game. Tierney's kind of old hat to everyone because he's like, we know all about Kieran Tierney's game. And what's good is I don't think he's diminished in any aspect of his game of what he brought Celtic in his first spell. And I think he'll actually have more to offer on top of that. I think Tierney's going to be a better player for Celtic now than he was before he left for Arsenal. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I think he'll be a better player, a better performer, and more consistent for Celtic in his current form than in his first spell. I really do think that. I think that the maturity and the experience that he's brought and the levels that he's been training and playing at over the last few years will see a step forward in Kieran Tierney. That's just if he can stay fit and all that and stay on the pitch, I really think we will see that.
Let's hope so. So he's back at Celtic Park on Saturday as well, and I don't know how many fans are going to be there to see him. Newcastle will probably have a good amount of fans, so that should make for an interesting game. It's going to be a good test for the team as well, and just the next step. And then we've really only got the Como Cup after that, and then we're into the real stuff.
Yeah, Newcastle just starting their pre-season. They're actually in Austria this week. I think they're in Austria all week until Friday, and then flying direct from Austria to Glasgow. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. It's another good test, against another level of opponent that Celtic need to be testing themselves against at this stage of pre-season. So I'm actually looking forward to the game now, just given the way that Celtic played last night and some of the stuff we were seeing and some of the football we were seeing. It does make you more optimistic about watching another pre-season match. So I'm looking forward to seeing the team on Saturday.
Okay, that's the next match. More to come from us, more on the website as well. Plenty of reaction to last night. You've been writing about the goalkeeper position as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of chat. There's been a lot of chat since the Scottish Cup final about Sinalo and Schmeichel. And I just looked into it and I'm just like, I looked at what Schmeichel offered last year, the performance levels he has, the underlying numbers behind his performance, not just like the headline grabbing statistics, etc. Schmeichel was excellent for Celtic last season in a way that Celtic haven't had a goalkeeper at that level for quite a long time. And he was just superb, both as a shot stopper, but both in his distribution as well, in both domestically and in the Champions League too, which is so crucial. And I think all this kind of talk of Schmeichel decline is a bit overdone. I guess you have to be wary of it. You have to be wary of decline. You can't just assume that a player is going to be at a level for his entire career. He will have decline at some point, and it might be a sharp decline when it comes. Brendan Rodgers will be wary of that. The coaching staff will be wary of that. But right now, Schmeichel is the clear number one for me. As confident as I am in Sinalo as a backup, then he can eventually be a replacement for Schmeichel. Right now, Schmeichel is the number one, and I'm just like, I've seen a fair bit of chat online, and in some places around the Sinalo thing is he should be coming into the team right now. For me, it's not quite the right time. I think Schmeichel has a lot more to offer, and I think the levels he hit last season were top tier, and I don't think we should be rushing him out of the team anytime soon.
Just think we need to settle down a little bit. It's fine to say, Sinalo has looked really good so far. He has a future number one, without saying, well, this is an absolute disaster if we start the season with Schmeichel and it's going to be the undoing of our campaign. I just think, just settle down a little bit. Schmeichel, we're probably going to see more of Sinalo this season than last season. To be honest, I think that was the plan anyway, but it will definitely be the plan now. Sinalo looks like a big presence from a few things I've seen. You would have heard him on Saturday in the closed door game. I get the impression even when he's not playing in that dressing room, he's one of the big voices driving standards. So, yeah, excited about that. Excited to have Casper back. And we'll head off.
What I would say about Sinalo is, like, when you're looking at data, you need to have a good bank of games to have a direct comparison that's worth anything without it just being a really small sample size. But what I looked at in Sinalo, very similar to Schmeichel in terms of like his expected save percentage and his distribution and his distribution under pressure, very similar to Schmeichel. So there's no signs from Sinalo that he didn't come in and perform at a decent level. He actually performed at a very high level coming in cold when Schmeichel had that injury. And that was very impressive because there's a lot of pressure on a keeper in that moment, especially a much younger keeper. Sinalo is a young keeper, and I'm very pleased with him. I'm very pleased that he's in the squad and ready to take on. But I look at Schmeichel and just think he's the complete package. He's the complete package for me. He has experience, he has the skills, he has the presence, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him this season.
As I say, what's the rush? Another year of Sinalo learning from Casper, watching everything he does, and then we'll see where we're at this time next year. Okay, we'll leave it there. Loads more on the website, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. And we'll take it from here. Hopefully Celtic have a wee signing or two lined up in the next couple of days. You never know. We'll catch up with you soon.